All right, everyone. Well, welcome to our webinar this evening. We appreciate you coming to check this out. And what we're going to be talking about over the next hour or so, give or take, is the challenges involved in taking the idea of an application and turning it into an actual product. And we all know that coming up with an app idea is, people who create apps are problem solvers. But when you actually go to code the product from idea to web application, there's some complexity to it. And what we know is that when we put an app out on the market, it's a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of work, and a lot of dreams, a lot of, mental energy invested in bringing a solution to market. And the statistics on how successful initial apps and apps from founders aren't great. So what we're going to talk about today is with Patrick Farrell, who is a senior software engineer. He's been at this for 15 years, is how do you set up the foundations for an application so that you have a better chance of succeeding at solving problems, creating cash flow, and making a product that makes a difference in the world. He's going to tell you a little bit more about his experience and how he got from, idea guy to product guy. And we're going to go through some of the steps that underlie the foundations that create successful products. At the end, we're going to do a live Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We're going to save them to the end. And yeah, take it away, Patrick. It's all you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here. Excited to have you all. And yes, please use the chat and engage, ask questions. We'll try to get to you guys at the end, anything you have. But we're going to get started here. And what we want to go through, like what the real problem you're facing is when you're trying to take an idea and bring it online, helping understand it, how to make this happen faster and easier, and the problems you're going to face along the way. And really the definition of what Sound Software Foundations is to help you build something that will get your idea out there in the world. I have had so many times where I have an idea and I'm like, I want to build an app from this. So the idea is to get you guys online faster and make money from your ideas online. So what's the real problem here? The real problem is that many visionaries and entrepreneurs have brilliant ideas. They want to know what they're going to do with those ideas to bring them into a product, but it can be very, very overwhelming to try to take that idea and do it online. Honestly, there's many, many options to make it happen. And I know for myself, I have been in a bar in New York City about 10 years ago, and just a couple of friends and myself came up with this idea. We talked about it for like 2 hours. And my friend Melissa, she actually did take it online. It was all about her getting this idea about helping people manage their contacts better. And quite honestly, like it took her about 4 to 5 years to get it out there, and she did do it. But it was stressful. It was overwhelming. She didn't really have a clear path forward to make it happen. So we don't want that to happen. We don't want to take it 4 years for you to get your ideas online. We want you to get there out quickly and get to market quickly. So what happens though when you have an idea and you want to get it out there in the world? You could be asking yourself questions like, where do I start? What do I actually want to build here? What tools should I be using to actually make this happen? And these are really foundational questions. There's so many tools out there. There's different text editors. There's different software packages. There's different frameworks. There's different everything. So if you don't know the path forward of like the critical pieces you need to make an app work, it can be very challenging. And that's why today we're going to really give you the foundation of what those critical pieces are so that you can move forward faster. But you could also be asking yourself, what platform should I build this on? What framework is the best product for my product? So these are foundational things that really should be thought about at the beginning, as well as if you've never done this webinar is designed to help you get the ideas out there in the world. And then we're going to have master classes later to help you implement it. So clarity is a key part of this whole process. What are your real users' problems and what solutions they need? There's something called the minimum viable product. And I am a big advocate of finding one little problem to solve and then coming up with the solution to that problem and getting it out there and getting people to use that problem or use that solution and grow on it and get feedback from it before you try to spend a bunch of money to build a big application that you don't know if anybody actually wants or needs. So what are the product goals? What are the requirements? What are the features? What are the resources and tools you need to actually build your application? And what is your financial strategy for success? These are all really important pieces of software clarity before you actually even get started. And quite honestly, it is complex to bring an idea to market. There are a lot of moving parts involved in creating a successful application. There's a lot of different ideas you can put into it. There's a lot of different cloud-based services you could use now. So it's how do you actually take your idea, get it online, and get it out there in an effective way, in a fast and easy manner that actually solves a problem. But we kind of have some sobering statistics here. Like 9 out of 10 startups fail. Like so many people have ideas, but very few people actually know what is required to get their ideas out there in the world. And only 1% of companies become the unicorn firms. You all probably use and know Uber, Airbnb, Slack, Stripe, Docker, Zoom, as we're using right now. But how many thousands, if not tens or thousands or even millions, were started but never got out there because they didn't have sound software foundations to get their idea out to market? We all want you guys to be the next Ubers, the next Airbnbs. So that's why you're here. But the percentage of first-time founders trying this is only 18%. So we really want to get you guys the understanding of what you need to get started quickly and easily and with a lot of support to make it happen. And going back to clarity, you're going to need clarity. What are you building and why? That's why it's at the bottom of the puzzle. Like, why are you building this thing? Like, if you don't know why you're building it and what problem you're solving, why are you building it? You could be doing other things in the world. So what's the architecture and the design you need? This is the next part: structure, systems. I'm a big advocate of the KISS principle. Keep it stupid simple. Keep it simple as you can, and then grow from there and create compartmentalized solutions that can grow over time. That's why we build functions. That's why we compartmentalize and use Docker, which I'm going to go into in a little bit. But what's the architecture you're building on? And then what are the frameworks? What are the infrastructure? This is the cloud-based technologies. What are you doing as an organization as well? Because it's not just about creating the app. It's about creating the marketing. It's about creating the customer base to actually get your ideas out to life as well. You can have the best app in the world, but if nobody uses it, it doesn't really matter. So without these sound software foundations, quite honestly, you have a challenging path to success. It's difficult to see through the storm if your windshield wipers are not working well. But if you have your systems working properly and you know what it looks like to actually drive through the storm with the clarity, you can get to the other side. So that is the idea here, is to give you some of those foundational principles so that you can get started and take what took me like honestly 8 years and do it in a few months. I truly believe you can if you work hard on this. So Kaia, if you can put up the poll real quick. And I'm just curious, for guys, if you can click on the poll and tell us what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now. And this might be the first time you're here learning about this, or maybe you're trying to like get an idea out there. But just curious, like what are the challenges you're facing? So one person says, what cloud should I use? Yes, there's a lot of different options. You can use Azure, you can use AWS, and there's reasons to use different ones. We can go into that. I'm not a coder, so I need developers. Well, this particular webinar is designed to just give you the awareness of what you need. It's not necessarily designed to teach you how to code. And whether you decide to do the coding or not, this is going to give you the foundational principles so you know what are the pieces that your app needs. Because if you decide to take an app to life, you're going to need to know a few of these foundational principles so that when you're working with developers as well, you're able to direct them in the right way. We have a couple other people that say overwhelm, not even sure where to begin, and they don't know where to ask for help. And yes, so many people, like, all the information is available on YouTube, but it's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. You're trying to find the correct information that will move you in the right direction in the right way. When being here, my goal is to help you know a step-by-step process so you can take your idea and get it on quickly and easily. So Kai, I don't know if you can share those results, if everybody can see them, but if you can, great. Let's see, share, and then awesome. So a lot of people looks like they're not coders, and a lot of overwhelm and not know where to go. So awesome. Okay. So my story. My story is I started at Virginia Tech back in 2019. Well, I graduated in 2019 and with a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in electrical engineering. That really helped me lay the foundational framework for my career. But I worked underneath a PhD in New York City for 5 years, and that was really the big part of my growth. Working underneath a PhD, having him direct me, teaching me his principles, his concepts. And at the time, I was one of the first developers there. Now they're over $100 million company, and like the software I wrote is still in that product to this day. So it's really cool to have that foundation that gave me a solid foundation for software principles that I'm working hard to offer to all of you through this webinar and through the upcoming masterclasses that we have coming through. So I realized, though, along the way that every app has some type of foundational principles that it all uses. So that's what we're going to also talk about today. But I really believe you can accelerate faster than I did. I spent 15 years trying to figure it out and turn them into profitable products. And through some of the stuff, including software I wrote for all of you, you can do this in a much faster way. So instead of taking roughly a year to launch your first MVP, remember, minimum viable product, I intend and hope you can do it in a matter of months. I do believe you can get an MVP out there in a matter of months if you work hard at it. So, and feel free to use the chat, guys. If you have questions, if you want me to slow down, please let me know in the chat. Want to make this interactive, and we'll open up for questions in a little bit. But if you guys have questions, please let me know. So there are 4 core foundational principles that are really important for every app. And I'm going to go through them one by one, but the first is the front end and the back end. The front end is your user interface. It's Zoom right now. You're in Zoom's front end and interacting with us in this app, but there's also an entire back end that lives in the cloud somewhere. I don't know which cloud provider they use, most likely AWS, but there's a bunch of code and logic in the cloud that's running this entire application and providing the link for us to be here connecting with each other today. So recognizing that your application is going to require a front-end development as well as a back-end development. And the back-end is quite often overlooked, but is very, very important and often more important than the actual app. Because people come up with ideas and they're like, I want to build this app for my phone, but they don't recognize that there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen on the back end to run in the cloud in order for your app to function properly. So if you do both of these together, we call that full stack development. So what's next? Well, API design. API design is important. It's how you get your data in and out. And if you design this the right way, it makes it a lot easier for you over time to basically modularize your application and have third parties interact with your data. It makes it easier for you to build it once on the web and then build out your Android and your iPhone application at a later date, but use the same framework you did when you were building your web application. I see a lot of people actually not building APIs and they just try to make it work. And then they're like, oh my gosh, well, like I want to give access to this data for someone else to use it in their CRM, and they didn't design the way to do it. And then they have to go back in and add that later. Well, if you design an API from the very start and make it secure and make it like easy to use, then you're going to be in a much better position. Your application is going to be more valuable in the long run for investors as well as growing your client base. Databases. Databases are huge too. I'm sure you've all probably used Airbnb at one point, or at least gone to a hotel website. What would happen if there was no data in that application? Well, you'd have a web page with not much. It wouldn't be very interesting for you. You'd have nothing there to look at. You'd have no idea where to go stay on Airbnb, and have no idea what you're actually doing on that website. The data is incredibly important, but how you store that data, how that data is backed up, how you recover that data in the event that something goes wrong. I'm sure many of you are seeing all the data hacks we're having right now, including, I believe, every US citizen's social security number was just taken. So there's a lot of things to think about when you're designing these applications. And it really, like, I don't want to scare anybody with this stuff, but you want to think about this from the start so you're not ending up with problems later. If you design it right from the start, you could end up in a very powerful position later on. But if you don't design it right from the start, you could end up in a very overwhelming position later on as well when you're trying to fix it when things go wrong. And then what's your deployment strategy? How do you launch, how do you manage, and how do you maintain the system? If you want to make updates to your code, how do you do the updates? How do you deploy it? This is honestly an entire job at many businesses. How do they maintain and deploy their upgrades? How do they scale their applications as they grow? It's incredibly important and something that is not taught very much in school, but it's a very, very critical piece of your deployment of your application and getting your idea online. So again, these are critical. Paying attention to these four critical sound software foundations and learning them and going through them are the necessary building blocks of what you need to build a sustainable and scalable software product. So I like to give people some examples in the real world quite often because it's difficult to see software unless you can go to the website, you can download the app, but what is the software, right? Like in a building, you can see there's a foundation and the building's built on top of it. The Millennium Tower in San Francisco is an example of a poor foundation. They opened it in 2009 and it sunk 18 inches and tilted 14 inches by 2016. This is not good, right? Like there's a lot of problems here, which I'll show you in the next slide, but they didn't create a solid foundation for themselves. The same with 161 Maiden Lane in New York City. They broke ground 10 years ago and it still can't be finished. They delayed returns. Maybe Kaia, we might want to change that to like, I don't know if they'll ever get their money back. Or like returns to investors, I don't know if it'll ever come back, right? Increased costs, delays, importance of a strong foundation is what they needed, and they didn't do it. And now there's also safety and security concerns, which can happen in the software world, especially when data is at play, where people could lose their data and have hacks and all the stuff that we know is happening every single day now. So I don't want you guys to turn your application into a lean skyscraper. I want you to build on a solid foundation from the very beginning. And that's why this presentation, I really believe, is super valuable to bring awareness around what is needed to build a solid software application online. So poll number two. Kaia, if you want to bring up poll number two, let's see if we can make that happen. All right, we have poll number two. So what questions do you have at this point? What foundation should you use? What framework should you use? How to use version control, which will go in? All of the above. It sounds like all of the above is a question, right? Like if you've never, especially if you're not a developer, which I understand many of you on this call are not developers. I really want to give you the awareness, and I understand that it's going to take some time to learn this stuff. How to manage my data and security. Which framework should I use? Okay, cool. But a lot of people are saying all of the above. Like it sounds like there's a lot of questions around how to actually take your idea and bring it online. So let's end that poll and we're going to continue on. So where do you get started? Well, we have broken it down into pieces for you. These pieces help you understand the concepts one by one by one. And honestly, software is built on blocks. You build blocks of code called functions that work together to build something bigger and bigger and bigger. Just like you build a building. If you have a foundation for a building, you build the basement of the building and you build the foundation and you build the first floor and you build the second floor. We want to build foundational principles that you can build everything on so that over time, if you want to build one app and then go to the next company and build the next app, you can, because everything is a similar foundation. So that's why we're breaking this down for you. So what is one of the key pieces? Well, Git is an incredibly key piece. This was, if you guys know Linux, Linux is one of the most widely used operating systems in the world. And Linus Torvalds created Linux several years ago, and then he created a program called Git, which helps you manage your code. And Git is also probably the most widely used version control system in the world. I use this tool every single day in my life. I wish they had taught it to me at Virginia Tech. They did not. It would have made my life a lot easier when I was in school. And to this day, I use this probably every single day, and it really helps me manage the code. I can track changes to the code. I can go back in time. I can know when I introduced a change. I can know if I introduced a change or if a teammate introduced a change. It allows us to have collaboration, and it really also helps me with my workflow. As I develop code, I usually get something working, and then I create what's called a commit. As I create that commit, that's a point in history where I know it worked. And then I continue developing it. And if I broke it, I can go back to that time in history where I know it worked. And that's really a powerful tool to keep you out of overwhelm. Software development can be very overwhelming. And I understand that. And it's not for the faint of heart to get started going down this journey. But with these tools, it can be a lot easier. And I want to give you the foundations for that. What's the next one? Docker. Docker is an incredibly powerful tool. You've probably heard of virtual machines in the past where you could run multiple operating systems on the same machine. Well, Docker is kind of the same thing for applications. You can take your idea and build it into a Docker container and then run it on my laptop here, make sure it's working really, really well. And then I can deploy it to the cloud in AWS or Azure or one of these or Google Cloud platform. But I don't have to repeat myself. I can make it work here. I can debug here, and it makes the developer experience very good. And also, it makes it more modular. It makes you be able to sell your things as enterprise applications in the future too. So many people want to create SaaS products, which is great. You can kind of think of Zoom as a SaaS product. It is a SaaS product. It's a application that we use their website, their servers to use. But maybe someday you'll want to get your code on your own servers and your own platforms. Well, if you create it in a Docker container, you could actually sell it as an enterprise version to do that as well. That's a different discussion, but if you're interested in that, let me know. And it creates simplicity. You can run it in the cloud, you can run it everywhere, you can run it on a Raspberry Pi, you build it once and it works everywhere. And the last one is the Gravity Web Framework. As I went down this path to learn more about building software, I noticed a key thing was like everybody needs the same structure. And I was looking for one and I tried to find one, and this is one I actually created myself. It gives you a structured development tool, a clear blueprint for organize your code. It helps you with scalability. It helps you not have to implement all the things that you're trying to figure out, like user login, and it's modular, and it allows, because it's open source, people can contribute back to it. So does Docker do the same thing as Homebrew? I'll get to that, but the answer is no, and I'll explain why as well later. So yes. So we're getting close to the end of this presentation, then we'll get to the Q&A and everything like that, but what about AI? Everybody's talking about AI. Everybody's talking about no-code options and all these slick things that you can use. They're not wrong. Like their AI is a powerful tool. There's a lot of good being had for people that don't know how to code to use AI, but it's not the utopia everybody believes it is. It's a good way to get something started, but there's a lot of problems with along the way. These tools can limit your control over your product's future. Like as you scale, you could end up spending a lot of money on AI tools, where if you just did it yourself and built it yourself, it would be a fraction, if not almost nothing, compared to like using open API to do a simple calculation. So it's not a solution for you to build a scalable solution. You can integrate with other APIs, but if you want to build a really strong application, you're going to want to take control of different pieces. And I've actually been I go into businesses and I help them understand, okay, if you're using AI for this, well, we could actually take that piece and take control of that, and you're going to save a bunch of money because you're no longer using OpenAI's API and things like that. And that's the thing, it can obscure the true costs as you scale users. It just can become too costly to actually make it work. And then you're also like, AI is just another software program that's running on the cloud. So you're building on somebody else's platform. And that's a dangerous place to be as well, right? Because if they change their platform, you have to be reactive and go back and change your platform in order to make sure that your code doesn't break. And that could be a very dangerous place to be as well. So I don't want you to be there. I want you to understand when to use AI, but I also want you to understand why you should know these principles and build your app yourself and then integrate with AIs rather than build everything on top of AI. That is not where we want to be. So the keys to long-term success are really like these solid product architecture, scalability, security, maintainability. All these things are critically important when you're developing code. And then what about investors? Well, I see a lot of people, like the tech industry is obviously, many people invest in tech companies. Tech companies get a lot of the investor dollars in this world. And that's exciting, like especially exciting if you know what I'm talking about here in this presentation, so you can get your ideas out in the world. But investors also want to put their money where they will get a return. They want their money back and they want a return. So if you don't know these things, you end up trying to build something that doesn't have a solid foundation and can't actually return the money to the investors. You're going to have some pretty pissed off investors, and they might not, they wouldn't invest in you in the future, right? Like you want to create something that is able to create this foundation that people believe in you. And they want confidence that when they put their money into your company, they're going to get it back. And it's also being used for something that's purposeful and meaningful and solving a real problem in the world. So sound application code attracts investors by showcasing its stability, growth potential, and a smart financial management. And what the goal is through this product and this offering that we're creating through these master classes, as well as a future training class, is to give you somewhat of a report card and maybe even a certification for these investors to say, oh, yes, you came and you did this work. You have all the foundational pieces. I feel confident giving you money. So the thing about this whole process, though, is that it's often hard to do it yourself. It's really hard to do it yourself. The one thing I do miss about my 9 to 5 and when I worked underneath that PhD in New York City was I miss walking to my neighbor's cubicle and solving a problem. I miss getting help from them. Do you know how many days, like especially in the last few years when I'm working on this stuff by myself, I can sit there and bang my head against the wall for hours and try to figure something out. And it takes a long time. It's very overwhelming. But if you can go to someone that knows the problem and can help you with a solution, and maybe I've encountered that before, you are going to be able to accelerate a lot faster. That's a key piece. It's a key piece of you guys not taking 10 years to do what I did and do it in a few months. You need people that have been there before that can guide you through the process. And that's also what we're creating here. So mentorship is incredibly valuable, helps you overcome the difficult times, it helps you accelerate your process, and it helps you learn from previous experience and past mistakes. Like the things that I've gone through, I can teach you, and then you don't have to do it yourself. And that's where the 3 levels of learning comes in. Intellectual is the first level. It's really what we're doing right here, right now, and it's valuable. You sit here, you learn something, you intellectually kind of know it, but you've never implemented anything. This is what happens in most of the higher education in many ways is they have to go into class, they memorize something for a test, and they never take action on it. And if they had to use it in the real world, maybe they'd be able to use it, maybe they wouldn't. Level 2, this is where you become empowered. This is where you become empowered by working with a team and other collaborators. I am designing this program so you can work with us and use what I have created to be empowered to create your own applications to take your ideas online. But level 3 is where it really gets fun. When you start to build things and when you start to get the challenges and you overcome the challenges, then you really, really know it. So level 3 embodied is what you're really going to create through this program, but you're going to use level 2 and build with a team so you can move forward a lot faster. And other people are amazing resources. The more people you have, the more secrets they can give you, the more that they can help you accelerate. So other people are the key to compressing a decade into a year. I promise you, other people are going to move you forward a lot faster, and that's why you're here today too. So I want you to accelerate your product. I want you to take your ideas out there in the world, give you the right frameworks, the right tool set, build your product from a development roadmap, understand the requirements necessary, and build the features one at a time. So I'm going to hand this over to, yes, I'm going to hand this over to Kaia, I think, right now. Is that
Got
when we're
it.
gonna hand it over?
Yeah, go ahead and take it to the next slide.
Cool. So we're excited to help you turn your ideas into an application. So Kai is going to take it now and tell you a little bit more, and then we're going to open up for Q&A.
All right, thank you, Patrick. That was a great run through. I appreciate that. I saw a few questions in the chat. As you can tell, and as you kind of probably already knew, great applications are not just about the code. Thinking that it's just about the code is myopic, quite frankly. There's a whole host of complex moving parts. Understanding how the code plays with other technology, understanding how people are going to use the code, understanding the costs, understanding the market, understanding the TAM, the total addressable market that your product could solve. All of these are important. And if you have an idea, but you're not a developer or you're not sure where to get started, there is a way that you can do this, and this is why we founded this thing called the Sound Software Foundation Center at Structured Cyber. And what the Sound Software Foundation Center does and is it's a series of masterclasses leading up to a 2-month course that can help you take your idea and literally turn it into that MVP, your minimum viable product, where you're taking your idea, putting together all the foundations, solving that first problem, road mapping it, understanding the financial costs, understanding the frameworks, the platforms, the portability, and the plan for this application so that you can confidently take it out into the world or take it to an investor or a team like that might be able to fund you into going big if you're ambitious. And to that, for that purpose, we're excited to announce the first 3 masterclasses that go with this webinar. And I'll keep this short because I wanted to really make sure that we addressed your questions. So Patrick, go ahead and click to the next slide. So the foundational tools for web application development are on the 3 tools that Patrick went over: Docker, Git, and the Gravity Web Framework. And these are the tools you need to set your foundations up. And these master classes are going to be 3 hours long, right? You don't have to be a developer to come to these classes, because if you do sign up and come to these classes, you will get a recording. And if you are working with a group of people, a team of people, you can share that recording with them. But they will give you the framework and the understanding of how these foundational tools work and why you want to pay attention to them before you start, storyboarding your application front end. Just like building a website or building a product, if you just go out there and take a template, or if you go out there and you take a pretty face and you start putting things into it, it's not going to have the depth or the foundations that you need to build a successful, saleable, marketable product. Those statistics that Patrick threw up earlier about the number of first-time founders or first-time application developers that really succeed with their product, it's pretty low. And the secret is putting in these foundations. So next slide. The first class that we've got planned, and this class actually only has, I think, 1 more seat left in it right now, is a Docker containerization class. It will be 3 hours of coming online. You'll do a little bit of work on your own, but basically it's a live class to learn how to leverage Docker and to understand how it's used and why it's used and how you would use it to build your code once and then move it from platform to platform. The second masterclass that we have is the Git class, and we still have several spots open in this one. This is September 19th. They'll be 3 hours long, live lessons, some collaborative work that we do together, live Q&A. If you want to bring your ideas and your questions to it, you'll get a chance to work through this. Git is the ground framework for managing code. Patrick mentioned it's something they don't teach in school necessarily, but this is your headquarters for your code. If you've got multiple people working on a project, if you're going to hire a developer, you need to know how to use Git, even if you're not the person writing the code. And then the third class that we offer is on the Gravity Web Framework. And Gravity is a set of Python-based tools that give you building blocks to build on. Unlike going to an AI tool or one of the big platforms and just hooking up to one of their existing services, you'll be able to see the pieces that you pull out of the Gravity Web Framework so that you'll have an understanding of what the foundations you're using are. And Patrick is modest because he actually created the Gravity Web Framework. This is one of his products. So if you want to come see how a product that was built with this ethos looks and works and feels, this would be a great one to come check out. Do you have any questions on these so far before I wrap this part up? Go ahead and drop them in the chat or unmute yourself if you'd like to ask.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, but these three things, that's incredibly valuable and incredibly important. And you'll be able to have like a working application. Like if you just learn this stuff, you could actually go out there and get an application that would have a website that you could show to an investor. And Git is a very, very valuable tool that also, like, the amount of times I've seen entrepreneurs and people give money to overseas developers and they don't know how Git works, then they end up in a situation where they've given their code off to someone else and they may never get that money back because they've like that it's under their control. So I want to give you the tools you have to make sure that even if you did hire outside developers, the code would be under your control.
Exactly.
All right.
All right. So these classes are going to happen at the end of September. We do have another Docker class planned beyond the one that was dated there because we've got people already in that class. But go ahead to the next slide. You're probably wondering at this point, what's the sales pitch, right? So imagine, before we get into the numbers, what will your application look like if you could build this in a collaborative and secure environment where you could ask for mentorship, peer-to-peer development, guidance, and you were able to build your product so it had not only a cool set of features and solved a real problem, but also had a development roadmap that you could build on over the course of time. John, you've got a question, an example of an application that we built using the Gravity Web Framework. Let's address that in the Q, or do you want to take that one now, Patrick?
We can take it now. So basically, the Gravity Framework came out of a real world application that I have worked on for the last 8 years. And it's a product right now that runs on an embedded system, kind of like a Raspberry Pi. That's one example of one that really works, basically gives them a web application they can run, and a $10 million per year product is being run to give them like an interface to control the entire product. That's one example. As well as I'm currently working on a kind of my own Google Photos type application that would run on the internet, that would run on top of Gravity. And it's also a teaching framework. So it's basically a really good framework to learn like how the foundational pieces work so that you're not overwhelmed. There are other frameworks out there in the world. One's called Django. There's one called Flask. But I really wrote Gravity to be a really simple framework for you to learn all the pieces, because I'm a big advocate of learning the foundational principles and not building on something that is super dependency heavy and you don't really know how it works. So that's the main ones that are happening right now, but I'm excited to see where it goes from here too.
Great. And Patrick can't name those products, otherwise he would. Because those products are the intellectual property of other people. So we can't give them a name, but a photo sharing app, an interface for a physical tool that they use the application to manage the physical tools deployment and usage in the field. All right, go ahead to the next slide.
And also, just to follow up on that, like everybody's probably configured a router before, not everyone, but like if you've ever got a router from like Comcast or whatever, you need a web interface. It can give you that web interface. It can also create the front end for like Airbnb. It can go all the way. It can do a lot of different things. So are you ready to stop struggling and bring your application to life?
Yep. So if this is you, or if you've got ideas that you'd like to put in play and you're ready to figure out how to do that, the masterclasses are going to be $147 to buy the ticket to come to your seat right at the day, up to the day of the event. And that's a one-person seat to come to these 3-hour classes where you'll get a hands-on lesson on using these different tools, and you'll walk away with some code that you've put in these different places. You'll also get a recording of the class to keep. If you sign up for the class at the early bird dates, and those early bird dates will be in the emails that we follow up with you on, the price for the tickets drops by $50, $97. And if you actually are very interested in this, and this is a hot ticket item for you, you're ready to get started with your idea, you can get all 3 master classes for just $275. But that's only if you get them before midnight Eastern time tomorrow. So again, this includes the Docker class, the Git class, and the Gravity class. And these particular classes would be a single ticket, but because you get the recording, you'd be more than welcome to share it with your development team. Now, we do have a course that's coming up at the end of these master classes later on this year. It starts at the middle of October. It's a 2-month course, and that is designed for a project team. So the tuition to come to that class will include up to 3 seats for one price. So that would be a live lectures, live Q&As, project for taking your idea and building an MVP within building an MVP within 2 months, and then you'll get back what Patrick was mentioning, the report card and the recommendations for how to take that product and launch it. The class isn't designed to actually launch your product, but it's designed depending on how motivated you are to get your product ready for launch. And Caitlin, if you get the bundle and the Docker class is full, we'll just roll you into the next Docker class, which will be happening, I believe, September 28th, although I have to check that date. So yeah, if you are interested in this, if this is something you're wanting to take your idea to market, the Sound Software Foundation Center here at Structured Cyber is here to support you. There are limited seats in these classes because we want to be able to give people the attention that they deserve for coming to a class where they're going to be doing hands-on work. There are limited project seats in the class itself, the course itself, which is the take your idea online in the course of 2 months. So if you have any questions, feel free. We're going to follow up with a recording link to this webinar. You can take a look at it. You can mull it over for a little bit. And we'll give you access to these master classes. We'll give you access to the information about the course if this is something that speaks to you. Really, if you know Patrick, if you know myself, we're dreamers. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, Patrick. We are dreamers. Yep. We're out here to make the world a better place. Both Patrick and I, as well as some of the other folks on this call, are how can I put it? We're here to build the new story of how people can work together and use technology in service to life and in service to your dreams, and to make it so that you are successful in getting out there with your application idea with a better chance of success than just throwing something against the wall and hoping it sticks. All right, I see some activity here in the chat going on.
Yep.
Pamela, if you're interested in getting an invitation to your dev team lead, reach out to us or share their name with us, and we're happy to pass that on. John, I'm going to turn the Git question over to Patrick in the Q&A session here. And anyone else who has questions, Patrick's going to take the technical ones. I'll take the business ones. So Patrick, why don't you start with the one about
yeah, so
licensing.
Git is open source. Docker, you can use Docker in your applications for free. There, I believe, is some type of, as you grow a product, maybe, but it is open source as well. You can just download it from their website. It's widely used at this point to launch applications, including like there's in addition to AWS, there's something called DigitalOcean, another cloud provider. They like allow you to deploy Docker containers. So super open source and super available. And Gravity is open source at this point. There is going to be some licensing if you include it into a larger enterprise product. But it's an open source product right now. So yeah. Pamela, yes. Pamela, I'm excited to see who would your dev team to join us. It would be really fun. If anybody wants to unmute themselves, they're welcome to ask questions. And we'll be doing this webinar again. Not sure the exact date. Kaia might have that, but we want
September
to
20th.
September 20th. So we'll be doing this webinar again. And if you have people that are interested in this idea, they want to learn more, they would like to be part of this, we would love to have you invite them to our next webinar, which I'm sure we'll get some feedback from this one and make it even better for next time and get you guys some real moving forward. I truly, truly believe that like you could take your idea and get it online in just a few months versus years through this process. And these master classes are the start. They're not the only thing you must do, clearly, but they're the start of the foundational principles that can get you started to do this process. And by the end of this, I really think that there'll be a lot of value. There's people on this call that are excellent selling software. You could collaborate with more people. That's our goal, is not just to have classes on just the technical piece, but we can have lots of classes in the future on different aspects of actually getting your idea out there in the world. So awesome. Thank you, Pamela. Anybody else have any questions? Kaia, I'm excited to have this recording now. This is the first time we have a recording, so everybody that was here, you'll get the recording. If you have any questions, and we're going to be creating some resources for all of you too, to kind of get some foundational principles. So if you're not quite ready to jump on in this yet, we would love to talk to you. So feel free to reach out, and we can do a call to understand more about what your needs are and how to actually help you make this happen. So
I have a
So,
question before we call it. Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
sorry to jump in. I think Gabriella already left, but she asked a question earlier that I actually am interested in the answer to.
Oh,
What's the
yeah,
difference?
Docker and Homebrew.
Yeah, what's the difference between Docker and Homebrew? Because you said not quite. So I'm interested what the actual difference
Okay,
is.
so Docker is a containerization platform. Homebrew is a package manager to help you install different products on your system to do development, as well as have it run on your system. They're very different yet complementary, because you would actually could potentially use, no, you really wouldn't use Homebrew. It's more Linux based. So it's a Homebrew is a package manager, and Docker is a virtualization containerization platform that allows you to run your code in multiple places. So
Got it. Thanks.
All right. So my question is, you don't have to say what it is, but if you've got an idea for an app and you're still on the call, would you raise your hand? I'm very curious. Some of you said you're not developers, but you're on this call. Do you have an app burning a hole in your pocket there? Are you looking for Pamela? I see
yeah,
your hand there.
actually, Kaia, how do you feel about this? I think we should end the recording and invite everyone to just turn their cameras on and talk real quick if they're open to
Sure.
that.
Yeah, that sounds
Just
great.
so that they feel like they don't want to be on the recording. So if you guys are, I know John has some ideas. I'm gonna open this up. We can stay for a little bit longer if you guys have to go, but I would